Welcome to Occult Archives, where we uncover the mysteries, myths, and legends behind history's most feared books, from
Yeah.
mystical grimoires to ancient religious texts. These books carry secrets too dangerous to be read. Are you ready to turn the pages of the unknown? This is Season 1, Episode 13,
Oh, wow.
the Asuri-Kalpa, the lost witchcraft ritual of the Atharva-Veda.
Okay.
Let's dive in. You're joining us today for a fascinating, if perhaps unsettling, deep dive into a text known as the Asuri-Kalpa.
Right?
When you hear that title, what comes to mind? What
Yeah.
can you tell us about this intriguing work for our listener?
When I hear the Asuri-Kalpa, it sounds a little mysterious and maybe a little unsettling.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I think that's appropriate because the text itself offers a very rare glimpse into some pretty ancient witchcraft practices.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's tied to a particular plant and its use in rituals that are described within the Atharva-Veda, which is one of the 4 sacred Vedic texts, known in part for its practical and sometimes esoteric applications. So think of this text, the Asuri-Kalpa, almost like a specific manual detailing how certain rituals were to be performed.
Rituals centered around a plant, you say.
Yes.
Our sources point to something called the Azuri plant. What can we unpack about this mysterious botanical element for our listener?
Well, our primary window into this comes from an 1889 dissertation by H.W. Magoon.
Okay.
He very diligently studied 3 different manuscript copies of the Asuri-Kalpa, along with a commentary on it.
Right.
From his analysis, he concluded that the Asuri was most likely black mustard, Sinapis ramosa Roxby.
Interesting.
He took note of its distinct features, the pungent leaves, how it bears fruit and flowers, and how those characteristics seem to inspire a form of religious contemplation within the text itself.
Black mustard. It's almost hard to picture something so common being at the heart of what sounds like pretty potent witchcraft.
Right.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what the connection was that elevated something so common to such a powerful symbol for these ancient practices.
It really does. And Magoon suggests that the devotees likely saw something more in the plant itself.
Oh.
Perhaps even a goddess residing within it, attributing its sharp, pungent nature to a supernatural power.
Wow.
The Asuri-Kalpa even describes the Asuri in very vivid, almost human-like terms, bright, four-sided grantor of wishes, reddish-blue colored,
Okay.
even as having a sword, likely referring to the shape of the seed pod, or a redstone, the seeds in hand.
Right.
So for our listener, picture taking something you see every day and imbuing it with this immense spiritual power.
So this deep dive will essentially explore how this seemingly ordinary plant black mustard became so central to these ancient witchcraft practices detailed in the Asuri-Kalpa.
Yes.
What was the main objective behind these rituals according to the text? What were people trying to achieve through them?
The primary aims seem to have been twofold,
Okay.
either to exert control or influence over others, bending them to one's will, or to inflict harm, even complete destruction upon enemies.
Wow.
This actually aligns with certain hymns found within the Atharva-Veda itself,
Okay.
which were sanctioned for such purposes.
Interesting.
However, it's interesting to note that other forms of witchcraft were considered lesser offenses in the laws of Manu,
Right.
which gives you a sense of the complex and perhaps contradictory societal views surrounding these kinds of rituals at the time.
So even in ancient times, there was a spectrum of what was considered acceptable or illicit when it came to trying to influence the world and the people in it through ritual means,
Absolutely.
subduing others and harming enemies. It paints a picture of the Asuri-Kalpa as a potentially powerful and maybe even dark set of practices.
It does.
Can you give us a specific example of how these rituals were carried out according to the text?
Certainly.
Okay.
The Asuri-Kalpa details specific rituals, and one prominent type involved creating an image, an effigy, of the person they wish to affect.
Okay.
This image was typically fashioned from ground mustard seeds mixed with other ingredients. This effigy would then be the focus of a series of actions.
Right.
It might be chopped, anointed with certain substances, and ultimately burned in a sacred fire.
What's striking here is the direct link the practitioners believed existed between the destruction of this image and the desired outcome for the person it represented. It was a very direct form of symbolic action.
It really was.
That sounds like what's often referred to as sympathetic magic, isn't it? The idea that that what happens to the image will in turn happen to the person it represents.
Exactly.
And our source Magoon's dissertation also points out similar practices in other cultures, which is quite interesting.
It is, and Magoon draws parallels with witchcraft traditions from Europe, Rome,
Wow.
and even the Ojibwe people, where effigies made of materials like wax dough or wood were used in remarkably similar ways to try and bring about harm or illness.
It raises a really important question. Is there a universality to certain magical practices? Does this widespread use of effigies point to a fundamental aspect of human psychology and the desire to exert influence through symbolic actions, regardless of culture or time period?
I think it really begs that question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because the similarities are so striking.
You mentioned that while the darker aspects seem prominent, the Asuri-Kalpa also outlines rituals for more.
Yeah.
Well, let's say positive purposes, or at least outcomes that would benefit the person performing the ritual, right?
Right.
What do those look like?
Yes, while the rituals aimed at causing harm tend to get more attention, the Asuri-Kalpa also includes practices intended to bring about blessings,
Okay.
such as good fortune, wealth, and even the birth of male offspring.
Interesting.
These rituals often involved offerings of different parts of the Asuri plant.
Okay.
The leaves, the flowers, the fruits, mixed with substances like ghee curds and honey.
Right.
And crucially, these actions were accompanied by specific mantras or chanted spells.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't solely focused on negative intentions. The power of the Asuri plant was seen as capable of influencing a range of outcomes.
So it wasn't all about curses and hexes aimed at others.
No.
There was also a belief in tapping into the power of the Asuri for personal gain and well-being.
It's exactly. This suggests a broader underlying belief in the plant's inherent power, that it possessed an energy that could be channeled for both harmful and beneficial ends,
Right.
depending entirely on how it was ritually employed.
I see.
The commentary on the Asuri-Kalpa even mentions meditations on the Asuri goddess in different forms and at different times of day.
Wow.
Each of these forms was associated with specific colors, attributes, and desired effects. Passion was linked to the morning spiritual darkness at noon and goodness in the afternoon.
Fascinating. So we see a very nuanced and complex relationship with this single plant.
Very much so.
It's truly fascinating how this one seemingly ordinary plant became the central focus for such a diverse array of rituals and intentions. The sheer level of detail in the descriptions, the precise ingredients, the specific gestures that needed to be performed, the incantations that had to be recited. It really paints a vivid picture of a complex and deeply ingrained magical system.
It does, and what's particularly striking is the juxtaposition of the seemingly mundane black mustard, something you could find in your spice rack,
Right.
with the deeply spiritual and magical thinking of that era.
Right.
The detailed descriptions of these rituals, along with the commentary, even with any limitations it might have as an interpretation from a later period,
Yeah.
offer invaluable insights into the mindset of the people who practice these rites
Right.
and the prevailing beliefs and superstitions of the time. It really makes you wonder about the psychological power that these rituals held, not only for the person performing them, but also for the individual who was the intended target, whether for good or ill.
It certainly does make you think. And the fact that these kinds of practices involving creating effigies and reciting spells have echoes in witchcraft traditions across so many different cultures and time periods.
Yeah.
As our source material highlight suggests, there's a deeper, perhaps even universal aspect of human psychology at play when people are faced with conflict or when they seek to exert influence over their circumstances. And the people around them thank you for shedding light on this rather obscure and yet incredibly intriguing text for our listener.
It was my pleasure. The Asuri-Kalpa, even though it focuses on what we today might consider dark or negative practices,
Right.
serves as a powerful reminder of the diverse ways in which different cultures throughout history have attempted to understand and interact with the unseen forces they believed were shaping their lives and the world around them.
So for you, our listener, we sincerely hope this deep dive into the Asuri-Kalpa has provided not just information, but those moments of realization and understanding that we always aim for. It's a powerful reminder that even in the most unusual and perhaps overlooked corners of history, there are profound insights to be gleaned about the fundamental aspects of human nature. And the enduring power of belief, what other forgotten rituals and ancient texts might still hold similar secrets waiting to be uncovered. It's definitely a question worth pondering long after our deep dive into this fascinating material concludes.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Occult Archives.
See you then.
Until then, stay curious
Stay safe.
and keep exploring the mysteries of the unknown.
Bye.